On October 20th, 1990, The Simpsons aired its first Halloween special, and it became a yearly tradition. It introduced tombstones with clever inscriptions instead of their usual couch gag, and had a parental warning from Marge that's hard to take seriously. It revolves around Bart and Lisa telling scary stories in the treehouse, and this is the only Treehouse of Horror where that happens. The first story, Bad Dream House, sees the Simpsons unwittingly purchasing a haunted house, only for the spirit to discover how unpleasant living with the Simpsons really is. The second story is Hungry Are the Damned. It's a parody of the Twilight Zone episode To Serve Man, and it introduced Kang and Kodos. It twists the ending by saying the aliens weren't really going to eat them, but we think they're lying. Next is a reading of The Raven with James Earl Jones. And this may be the best telling of that story ever, even though he has to share lines with Homer and is constantly heckled by Bart. But it was a good, strong start for the series. To quote The Raven, "Eat my shorts." It's time to talk about The Simpsons Halloween Special, Part 2. This one uses the scary names in the credits. It starts with another warning from Marge, of course, and the premise this time is that candy gives you nightmares. First, Lisa dreams about the monkey's paw that grants wishes. Naturally, every wish that The Simpsons makes backfires on them, except for Maggie's. Now Homer is disappointed in his final wish, but it's a perfectly good sandwich. He's just being picky. Normally, this guy will eat anything. Next, Bart dreams of ruling Springfield as its evil overlord with Twilight Zone powers and turns Homer into a toy based on one of his own toys. This leads to a touching moment that warms our hearts but leaves him screaming. Brat. And finally, Homer dreams up an even more ghoulish version of Mr. Burns, who tries to create a super employee by putting Homer's brain in a robot. And what a surprise! Robot Homer is just as lazy. The whole thing ends with them becoming a two-headed monstrosity, but that's why they call it horror. In The Simpsons Halloween Special Part 3, Homer warns the audience, but it's just for laughs. This is the first one with a couch gag and involves telling scary stories at a Halloween party. First up is Clown Without Pity. A murderous, Chucky-like Krusty doll is on the rampage. But Krusty products have a long history of safety problems, so it's really not surprising that this has an evil setting. Second is King Homer. It's the first time that Homer is shown as a giant monster that eats people, but it won't be the last. In the end, his diet was his downfall, but I wonder what he ate back on the island since he was battling dinosaurs and now he can't even climb up 2 stories. Thirdly is Dial Z for zombies. Bart's botched attempt to bring the family cat back to life brings every nearby human corpse into a zombie. In fact, George Washington, Einstein, and Shakespeare make appearances, so it might not just be Springfield's dead. Either way, they leave off saying that it's really TV that turns us into zombies. You know, like the internet. The fourth Simpsons Halloween Special is an homage to Night Gallery, as though the family took a trip to the museum and Bart decided to film a video for YouTube. Each painting presented has a story, and the first one is The Devil and Homer Simpson. It's the first tale showing what Homer will do for a donut. It's like his Klondike bar. And he never even said if the Diablo nut was even good or not. Where's his review? Next up is the Twilight Zone parody, Terror at 5.5 Feet. Bart has a premonition about danger on the school bus that really serves no purpose in the story except to make him nervous. And they somehow managed to do the whole segment without anyone doing a William Shatner impression. That is so unlike them. Lastly, there is Bart Simpson's Dracula, which parodies the Francis Ford Coppola movie and Lost Boys, among other things. It feels like an obligation, but there's some zingers. And then it ends with a nod to the Peanuts Christmas special. Now that's a bright idea. In the fifth Treehouse of Horror, we bid farewell to amusing tombstones. Save a few bucks with a simpler lead-in, then we get right to the stories. Starting with The Shinning. It has the second Indian burial ground reference and the second I owe you a Coke line. We also see that having a radio to the police and a psychic connection to Willie doesn't save the day if you're a Simpson. We also see that Willie lives just outside, but never checks in on them. Next is Time and Punishment. Homer makes a time-traveling toaster for some reason and creates a bunch of alternate realities, but never burns the toast. One of the realities is a perfect world that he runs from, but they probably would have expected a perfect Homer, so he probably wouldn't have fit in anyway. Lastly, Nightmare Cafeteria, where they eat the school kids in punny ways. So if they went with sloppy Jimbos and Uterbraten, what would they have done with The Simpsons? Bar tacos with Lee's salsa? Anyway, this time the only consistency is Willie getting killed in each segment. But don't worry, he'll be back. The sixth Treehouse of Horror has no scary warning from Marge, nor does it have a wraparound story. It just gets right down to it. Starting with Attack of the 50-Foot Eyesores. By my count, this is the third Halloween special where Homer gets himself into trouble over a donut. Only this time he drags the whole town into it. Go! Then Willie returns in the second segment called Nightmare on Evergreen Terrace. After being killed 3 times by an axe in the previous special, this time he's in full Freddy Krueger mode, and it's still a better telling than the Michael Bay movie. Yeah, I said it. Thirdly is Homer 3, or Homer Cubed. Some even call it Homer 3D. For a segment leaning into this new technology, it's got some quippy dialogue. And since the staff animators work with the 3D animators, the character movements hold up pretty well. Mostly. But the scariest thing about this one is watching Patty clean dead hermit crabs out of their shells. Treehouse of Horror 7 starts with a quick jack-o'-lantern joke, then rolls straight into the stories, starting with The Thing and I. This segment does nothing to assure me that Homer and Marge are good parents, even in an Elseworld setting. Oh, and they're also terrible liars and lousy at keeping secrets. You know, considering the medical carelessness that powers this plot, it could have easily been a Dr. Nick story. Hi, everybody! Second is the Genesis tub. Now, I'm very distracted by Marge calling square pancakes waffles, but we'll ignore it. Bart is extra Barty in this one, so he makes an easy villain. But the previous segment established that Lisa lets the cat sleep in her room sometimes, and she just puts the dish on the floor like a cat food bowl. So they're both bad for Tiny Town. Thirdly, and possibly the most relevant, is Citizen Kang, where 2 space aliens with a ship full of rum replace the candidates and count on a 2-party system to elevate one of them to power. Spoiler alert, it works. But don't blame me, I voted for Kodos. Treehouse of Horror 8 kicks off with the bloody murder of a Fox censor. Is there a message in there somewhere? Then we go straight to the Homega Man. Homer is the last man on Earth. Well, he thinks so. And goes on a rampage of weird Homer stuff. But then the mutated freaks interrupt him and he puts his pants back on, so yay freaks. Next is Fly vs. Fly. Homer gets all uninhibited again after getting a teleportation device and does some more Homer stuff. Marge interrupts him this time, yay Marge. Then a monster takes Bart's place and they can't tell the difference. Bad parenting or uncanny resemblance? Anyway, the last one is Easy Bake Coven. Evil Halloween witches come to eat the town's kids, but get bribed with sweets instead. That's a fair deal. But what will this do for the kids' self-esteem? I'm worth a popcorn ball. Yeah, well, my mom gave him a whole cake for me. Aww. Then the old sailor summarizes the tale. Bart dresses like a pirate. The end. Treehouse of Horror 9 starts with a semi-normal Simpsons lead-in, with the chalkboard and everything. But everyone ends up dead, and there's a couch gag with Freddy and Jason. First, there's Hell to Pay. Snake's hair gets transplanted onto Homer's brain. But the real horror is watching Snake comb his hair with nacho cheese and Moe's syphilis cereal. And Homer asking his family, who wants to see their sexy new daddy, with his fly open. Ew! Anyway, next is The Terror of Tiny Toon. It's the touching story of how Itchy and Scratchy became the Simpsons family pets. But first, Bart and Lisa get sucked into a TV cartoon nightmare of blood and violence. So enjoy the ride. Lastly is Starship Poopers. Yeah, the episode names are kinda lazy sometimes. The beats are, Kang is actually Maggie's dad, her pacifier is an intergalactic beacon, Kang and Kodos are planting hybrid babies all around the galaxy, and the death of Jerry Springer. Whoa. Not a lot of Halloween here, but it sure is weird. The 10th Treehouse of Horror begins with a Kang and Kodos lead-in that'll make you say, skip. Then we go to I Know What You Diddly Idly Did, which is the second time that a Simpson killed Flanders for Halloween. Well, he's not really dead, but they think he is. And it's Weekend at Flanders until his funeral. Then he returns and shames them with graffiti. Like that one movie. Next is Desperately Zeking Xena. I'm pretty sure that's how that's pronounced. Now, in the beginning, Lisa asks, what do aliens have to do with Halloween? Well, as much as superheroes do, I guess. This bit sees Bart and Lisa get superpowers, then go off to rescue Lucy Lawless, who ends up rescuing them instead. Plot twist, but her and Comic Book Guy's dialogue makes it memorable. Last is Life's a Glitch, Then You Die. This is a dated bit, bottling the fun panic surrounding the Y2K bug. But like the event itself, it's pretty forgettable. But you do get to watch Homer and Bart's heads blow up. Boom! And that's 10.